Welcome to the Multiply Your Business podcast, where we bring you inspiring interviews with top entrepreneurs on how they generated more leads, closed more sales, made more money, developed the mindset they needed to be successful, and how they built the business and lifestyle they always dreamed of. We'll teach you how to do this too. Broadcasting from the Black Card Book Studio, here is your host, Scott Morrison.
So this is a killer interview with Anastasia Button, who's known as the Millennial Girl. Now, did you know that by 2025, 76% of the workplace is going to be made up of millennials? And I find they are probably, at least today, there's more confusion around their generation than anybody else. They're different, and largely they're different because they're the first generation to grow up with the internet and now be in work, and it's different. The rules are changing, and the millennials are kind of blazing the way for us to do that. So I brought on Anastasia to talk to her about millennials, about how they're different, about everything that's awesome about their generation, how people who are not millennials can work with them as well. And what I found through this interview with her is a big part of her work, not just with millennials, but a big part of her work is how to identify your purpose. So if you want to identify your purpose, if you want to figure out what you should be doing, why you want to do that, listen to this episode, download the report that she has later on. She has a 20-question survey for you to help you go and identify your purpose, and I think you're going to love it. So enjoy this episode. All right, welcome again to another episode of the podcast. I'm thrilled to have the Millennial Girl on the line today. It's Anastasia Button. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you too. It's not every day I get to talk to the Millennial Girl. That just first off, that's a great catch and hashtag for you for people to know who you are.
Absolutely. It's kind of my code name.
Yeah, right away it stands out, which is awesome. I find a lot of people have a hard time figuring out how do I position myself, but there you are in one hashtag, you got it. So good job there, Anastasia.
Thank you.
So you are with millennials, and I want to talk about that a bunch. And a big reason why we're having you on today is talk about what you're doing with millennials, what you're doing with people who work with them, just that whole world, because I find there's a big conversation going on around that today. So if you could give the listeners at least get to know you a little bit about your background and how you got to the point where you realize you want to be working with millennials.
Yeah, well, I used to be one of the, as people think, typical millennial, where I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I kind of was floating around. I had a college degree, but I wasn't using it, and no one wanted to hire me for a bachelor's in history, unfortunately. And so, thanks, Mom, for pushing history. So, so I floated around a little bit, did this and that, and all of a sudden I find myself on top of a 2-story home, multi-million-dollar home, gorgeous. But I'm standing on the roof looking at the mountains here in Colorado, which we love our mountains, and I realized my life sucked so bad. I was so broke. I hated my life. I did not like my job, and I was a roofing contractor at the time. That's why I was standing on that roof.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask what you're doing up there.
Yeah, what am I doing on a roof? I'm selling roofs, and how that works is I would knock on people's doors and try to sell them roofs that some people didn't really need them. And I would normally get doors literally slammed in my face or shoes thrown at me, newspapers thrown at me, you name it. Nobody wanted to work with me. Nobody liked me. And I didn't like myself. And so I'm standing on this roof looking at these mountains, just thinking, what could life be if I actually had a purpose in my life? And that's where it started. And so I kind of went down this very short, very quick journey because I was very committed to myself to find my purpose. And when I found it, all of a sudden, everything started to fall into my lap and everything started to align. And I met this publisher, Black Card Books, and it was at the right time. And so decided I was going to become an author. And fast forward a year and a half, and here we are today. And I'm the author of the book, #New Job, New Life. But I've also been on the news. I've been coaching. I've been helping companies. And I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of Denver for executive education.
That's cool.
So it's just amazing what can happen when you are in your purpose. You are in that pocket of authentic living. Yeah. And that's kind of what I do, is I really help people understand what their purpose in life is so they can obtain a career or business that means that's fulfilling for them. But on the flip side, I decided to focus on millennials. And, I get this question a lot. Why millennials? Yeah. And Well, it was funny because when I decided I was going to write this book and I had this idea of helping people find their purpose, I just started getting all sorts of things thrown at me about millennials. Millennials are entitled. Millennials are naggy. Millennials feel like they should be CEO once they walk into the office, you know? And so I was blown away with all this negativity on our generation. And so I said, that's not the case at all. And so I kind of started to go on this mission of helping millennials. But what's also happened is where I help companies and organizations understand how to attract, retain, and sell to millennials, because they are the biggest buying market and they are the ones that really feel like they want to make the biggest impact in the world, and they're not patient enough to wait to let that happen.
Yeah.
So they're very eager. And so that's that in a nutshell. I'm just the millennial girl. I help companies with millennials and I help millennials with millennials. And so
that's so cool. Yeah. So we'll unpack millennials in a second. I don't want to talk about that a bunch, but go back to, the point we're standing on the roof and shortly thereafter you figure out your purpose. How did you figure out your purpose?
I honestly had to get a life coach because I was so tired of waiting to figure out what I wanted to do and just rely on myself. And so I decided to actually reach out for help. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are afraid to reach out for help, but in all honesty, you're just reaching out for opportunity. And so I did that, and I got myself a life coach, and within just 2 sessions, I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. Mm-hmm. And since when you really get aligned with that authentic self and your purpose, everything starts to be attracted to you, everything you desire. And so I really love helping people in that pocket, because once you're able to identify who you are and what you want, then you can make the journey to get there. But if you don't know where you are and where you want to go, then that's where you get lost and you get off path, you get on tangent, and then you have to realign again. Yeah. And so to prevent that from happening, you get to where you want to be that much faster.
Sure. So how do you define that then? What is your purpose? What do you want to do with your life?
Well, with me, my purpose is to help other people find their purpose in life.
Okay.
So that they can obtain a career and business that's fulfilling for them. And that goes in so many different ways. So on one side, I do a lot of coaching for millennials. I do a lot of coaching for business owners, but I also do consulting for businesses. Now, how can I fulfill my purpose in all those avenues? It's really all about people being able to identify who they are and where they work best, mm-hmm. and is fulfilling for them. And so that can happen with 10 people working together, being able to identify individual purposes and how they can all work together towards a common goal, mm-hmm. or just on the individual. And so I'm able to transfer this purpose in all sorts of ways that makes me really excited. And that's what makes us want to live, is to be excited and to want to be there the next day to do more work or to make more impact. And so that's why I love what I do.
So with your life coach, was it a series of questions or exercises, or how did you really discover this purpose here, uncover it for yourself?
Well, his was a little unorthodox.
Great life coaches are.
Yes, it was. He really was able to push me and ask the hard questions and expect an answer. And that was one thing that I realized that I need to do with my clients too, is that I really need to push it. And so he started asking me those questions, and I had to find the answer. Even if it took me a minute to find the answer, I had to find it.
Right.
And it just gets you to start thinking about yourself and not caring about what the world expects of you. And so that's what I started to create when I started doing my coaching. And it's also my book, but I created this thing called the 20 Questions to Find Your Purpose. Uh-huh. And it's just 20 questions. Some people get it in 10, some people get it in 22, but I always do around 20 because that's the average. And just in 20 questions, you can find your purpose in life. And cool. It's not as hard as people think. It's just being open enough to discover who you are.
Yeah. I find that a lot of people are, they have a hard time. Some people have a hard time discovering their purpose. Why do you think that is? What do you think blocks us from being able to do that?
Fear. Absolutely.
Fear of what?
And it's fear of all sorts of things. We have a lot of fear of, well, mom and dad kind of expected you or subliminally told you have to go to college, get a degree, work your job, and then retire. Right. And then there's society that says you have to look a certain way or you have to act a certain way. And then there's yourself who feels like, well, I want to have this, so I have to become this. Mm-hmm. But do you want to become that is the question.
So basically you're living for other people, not for yourself.
Absolutely. And so now it's, instead of focusing so much on the fear, let's focus on what lights you up.
Yeah.
Then find the ways to blow through the fear that's going to come in front of you.
Interesting. That's cool. I love that. So how did you, originally find your coach? Somebody refer him to you, or did you know who them already?
It was that, again, when you're wanting something, it'll come to you.
Yeah.
I got on Thumbtack of all apps. And I was just like,
huh?
yeah, like I said, I was broke roofing contractor, so I couldn't afford like a $300 an hour kind of thing. So I got on Thumbtack, which is kind of some cheap ways you can find anything.
Yeah.
Contractors, artists, coaches. And I found my coach on there. And so we had our session, and I said, I had no idea what coaching really was. So I just said yes. And I just put my all into it.
That's good. And I think that's a key right there. Put your all into something, and amazing what you get out of it. Did I lose you, Anastasia?
No, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Good. Sorry. I totally cut out there. I'll cut this part out of the interview. So.
Pause for effect.
Cool. Yeah, right. All right, love it. So, working with your coach, then you discovered this about yourself. How did you start turning it into the business?
I almost started immediately. I knew that I wanted to help people with their purpose. So that meant some form of coaching. And so I knew nothing about coaching. I was just exposed to it, but I knew that that was an avenue I had to do it along with a book. And so I actually reached out to my network, and I just said, hey, I'm going to offer 6 months of free coaching while I get this book and this platform off the ground, just so I can find my technique. And really find myself. Now, I didn't get certified. I didn't read a whole lot of books about coaching. I really wanted to make this a self-discovery. And you can go either way, whichever you feel comfortable with, if you decide to go down that route. So I started the 6-month coaching for free, just once a week for 6 months. And that's where I really discovered my 20 questions to find your purpose. Because with those amount of people, and it wasn't a small amount, it was over 10 people, I actually had a 100% success rate in finding a purpose and finding your path, and then working with you to get down there. And it was absolutely a phenomenal experience and methodology that I started to put that into actual practice, and it continued to have great effect. And so, you just refine and you tweak and you continue, you refine, you tweak and you continue.
Yeah.
And that's what I kept doing. But the 20 questions always stayed. And I think it's just so powerful because it's really delving so deep into who you are. And again, once you're able to find that center, you can find the end game and how to get there. It
is, but it's also bite size. You know what I mean? Like if you say to me, I'm going to give you 20 questions and you can discover your purpose. Oh yeah, I could do that. That I get that. I think people can relate to that. But as you're saying, it's also goes very deep with themselves to help them figure out who they are and what they're doing.
Absolutely. And the one thing that I always encounter with most clients is once they find their purpose, once they find their purpose, then fear starts to sit in the next day or maybe a few hours later. It's like, well, this is my purpose, but oh my gosh, what about this, that, family, life?
Yeah.
And it all starts to come in again. So it's once you find your purpose, you immediately have to understand what your primary fear is.
Sure.
Because once you're able to find that fear, and it usually boils down to two things: I'm not good enough or I'm not loved. And so once you're able to identify what that primary fear is, then you're able to see, oh, I'm not good enough because, mom told me this as I was growing up, or the teachers told me this as I was growing up, and that's coming at me right now. But no, I need to remember my purpose, because that's what's most important.
Do people ever have more than one purpose, or is it you have one overriding purpose with life?
Like I said, you usually have about one purpose. I haven't actually encountered someone who had two completely different purposes. They all align to the same point.
Okay.
But the idea is that your purpose, like mine, you can interpret it into different actions and different businesses and different careers. And so your purpose doesn't say, oh, I'm an accountant, now I need to become a doctor. It's not like that. It's just identifying who you are and remembering that person. And when you decide to make a decision towards life, relationship, or anything else, you understand why you're doing it rather than because the world expects me to.
Yeah. I find sometimes people have, they have their professional purpose, but then they have their family purpose, which may or may not overlap or be the same. So sometimes I wonder if that's, you have to dive down even deeper to find your one overall writing purpose, because chances are something can relate to every aspect of your life.
Well, there's definitely values in play. I mean, when you're at work, there's certain values that are important to you. When you're with your family, there are certain values that are important to you. But again, and this is very difficult for parents. I find this very difficult for parents, especially moms, where you have a purpose and you feel like because you have a purpose, now you're sacrificing your kids to have that purpose. And that's absolutely not true. Again, it's more about realizing who you are and what's important for you in life to be happy, because if you're not happy and you're not feeling fulfilled in life, that's also translating to your kids.
Sure.
Because growing up with that kind of an imprint where, I've met so many people where their parents were absolutely miserable, and that's what they thought love was. And so when they got married, they were miserable. And, that whole trickle down effect.
Yeah.
And so it's that same idea. If you want to live with your purpose and have that fulfilled as, it can be being a mom, it can be being a doctor. It doesn't really matter what activities you're doing. It's as long as it's making you fulfilled and happy. And if your kids see that, then they know, oh, that's what life should be like.
Yeah. And the other thing with that, by the way, you can be both. You can be a mom and you can be a doctor and be fulfilled.
Absolutely.
I find often that people feel it's one or the other, but in reality, you can have it all.
You can have it all. And again, that is where I'm sacrificing for others so that I don't fulfill my purpose, so that they can have it. And that's actually the wrong way to go about things.
Sure.
Because if you're sacrificing yourself, it's just like if you're a caregiver. I used to be a caregiver for a wounded warrior for 2 years. And if I didn't take care of myself, I couldn't take care of him, which he relied a lot on me.
Yeah.
And so it took a while for me to realize that, because when I suffered, he suffered.
Yeah, I listened the other day to a podcast where JJ Virgin was being interviewed, and her son went through this horrific, he was hit by a car. And just years and years and years of recovery. She was in the hospital her son was in the hospital for months. But during that time, she made sure she got her 8 hours of sleep, and she exercised, and she ate clean, and she did all these things for herself. And she said some people were criticizing her, saying she's being very selfish because she should be completely focused on her son. And she's like, I had to explain to them, no, you don't get it. I'm doing those things for my son because I need to be my best self. I'm literally making life or death decisions with my son right now. I need my mind and my body and everything to be sharp so that I can do that. And when you put it in that perspective, you're not being selfish at all. You taking care of you is one of the least selfish things you could be doing.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure exactly where that all originated from, where we think that we have to sacrifice our health or our purpose to improve the lives of others. Because if we're all having our purpose in life, just imagine this, and it's probably never going to happen, but imagine it. If the billions of people on the earth felt like they were their true, authentic selves, and they were fulfilling a purpose that was fulfilling for them, the world would be an absolutely different place. And so it's that idea that I'm so passionate about, is really just to create a person or a community to really get aligned with who they are and how they can help others at their best selves, kind of like how you said, be your best self for others. And you can't be your best self if you're sacrificing so much.
Right. No, you definitely can't be. I love it. So your 20 questions, where can people get that? I know you mentioned your book. Is that the best source to get it?
That is the best source to get it. I also have a video series on YouTube as well if you have some difficulties finding the purpose through the exercise. But you can find the exercise actually through a free copy of my book. And you can get that at www.newjobnewlifebook.com. newjobnewlifebook.com. And you just get a free copy, and you'll see it in one of the first chapters, because I feel it's so important.
Yeah.
Get it there now. And if you have more questions, there is a video series on YouTube that can help you walk through the process.
Cool. Where can they find that on YouTube? Just search
search my name, Anastasia Button. I think I'm the only one on social media at this point.
Yeah. That's nice. Buy every domain. Do whatever you can.
Yeah, right?
Name, so.
That's what I did. I was like, it's gone, guys.
Yeah. That's fascinating. This is all fascinating, that just the purpose and how you got to that. I love the story. I want to talk to you about the whole millennial side of this. And first, let's bridge it a little bit. So you, from what you're saying earlier, you started working with millennials because you identified your purpose, but if I heard you right, you kept seeing some misunderstanding and all this negativity around millennials, and you wanted to make a difference. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And I think I resonated with millennials in those terms was because it just created these really negative and almost venomous environments within family, within themselves, but also at the workplace. And so putting a lot of blame or even labeling an entire generation as entitled or whatever is very unfair in a lot of situations. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a millennial. I think that on every generation. Boomers are not just old, rich white men, you know? Right. And so I don't believe in labeling a generation that way, but I know there's a lot of harmony that can happen with everybody. And there's a lot of give and take where people can benefit from each other. And for some reason, at least the media and a lot of the workplace was losing that. And I felt that if I can contribute in one way or another towards helping people communicate and have a wonderful cultural environment together, whether it's, you know, at home or at work, I think that would better the world.
Yeah, well, for sure it would. So we're all on the same page. Define what a millennial is.
Yeah, that's the ultimate question. What is a millennial? And some of you who are listening to this might find out that, hey, oh, wait, I'm a millennial. And so if you're born between 1979 to 1994, you are considered the millennial generation.
Okay.
And there's a lot of give and take to those numbers, but, you know, we just kind of chunked it together because technology has such an imprint on generations and it's only getting faster and bigger. Yeah. So it's very hard to just say, well, this is a generation when it only spans like 3 years. So we're just going to keep it in chunks in that aspect from here on out. And millennials, you can probably remember a time where the computer or the internet wasn't in your home or at school. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of remember that transition, but you entered into that technology at a younger age, whether it was middle school, high school, and especially college and the workplace. So you're not tech savvy, not like the generations behind us, but you are, in a sense, tech dependent. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Mm-hmm. Sure. Being tech dependent just means I like what's in front of me and this tool that I'm using, and I don't care much about how it works as long as it works.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. So, is it the technology really the internet's gotten so popular during that time frame, or popular isn't the right word. It's part of our day-to-day life. Absolutely. Is that what makes this millennial generation seem so different to the older generations, especially?
You know, I think so because, you know, I remember being in college and someone coming up to me and being like, "Look what I got. It's the first iPhone." And so, you know, we're in college, we're being, or even just after, and we're being imprinted with this amazing technology that not only connects us with more people, but it connects us more on a worldwide basis. So you got to think of a few events with millennials.
Okay.
The first one was 2011. We all know what happened in 2011 at 9/11. We had 2 airplanes hit the World Trade Center, mm-hmm. But it wasn't just an American event. It was on television live worldwide. That is the first time that something that catastrophic has happened live on a worldwide basis. Right. And so what that does to a younger generation who's in their middle school, high school years, they're going to get imprinted with that. They remember that. And it's not something that disconnects us with people. It's something that brings people together.
For sure.
And then all of a sudden in 2000, I believe 3, then all of a sudden we have Google and Facebook pops up. Mm-hmm. And now we're able to connect with people in Ukraine. We're able to connect with people in Japan. We're able to connect with people in Venezuela. And those are just 3 places that I know in the last 5 years have had a catastrophic event. And so my friends are being affected now. And then in 2008, the world experienced a huge crash in the economy. And now our parents are losing homes and we're losing homes. And we see our parents and grandparents losing their portfolios and now they're having to work longer. And so with all these aspects put together, now we don't identify ourselves as a 9-to-5 worker. Mm-hmm. We identify ourselves as someone who wants to make a bigger impact and we're eager to do it. And we don't want to wait until we're 65 to accomplish that.
Sure.
Because that's not guaranteed anymore.
So that all sounds positive. I want to make a bigger impact. Why then is there so much negativity around the millennial generation?
Because we are impatient. We're very eager, right? Mm-hmm. So if we go into a business and we start working there and we realize, oh, you know what? This isn't really matching the lifestyle that I want to have. Again, we saw our parents and grandparents lose all their retirement money in homes. So we're not going to stick around for a company that doesn't give us a fulfilling lifestyle mm-hmm. because We can't wait until retirement to have a lifestyle. So we better have it now too. So we only stick around at a company for 2, 3, tops 5 years, and then we move to a different company. And that's the big frustration that people have. Millennials don't want to work. Millennials don't want to stay. They're entitled. They feel like they should be the CEO once they walk into the office. You know, we hear it all. But there's a lack of understanding that this is the generation that is demanding to have a purpose with their work. And they do not want to compromise that.
Yeah.
And so that's the communication that needs to happen. When you hire someone, how does their purpose align with your end goal? And to make that communication and to show they have value once they come into the workplace too, rather than just, you know, clock in, clock out, that's all we want. No, do you have any ideas? You're fresh out of college, you have a fresh mind. What ideas do you have? We do have something to contribute, and we don't want to wait 20 years until we can contribute.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, millennials want results faster. They want it sooner. They want to get to where they want to go sooner than waiting out an entire career and then be able to retire at 65.
Absolutely. I mean, especially with today, with the opportunity that we can do that. Yeah. We have the ability with all the tools that the computers and internet has given us. And so if you, in a sense, unleash a millennial with a plan that they have, an established plan, if you unleash your millennials, you will be surprised with what they can do in a very short amount of time for not only themselves, but for you as an employer or for your team, even within your family.
So what do you mean by unleash them?
Again, we have this idea that we have to be in a corporate ladder status when we have a company. For example, you wait 5 years, you get a promotion. You wait 5 years, you get a promotion. Well, that's not even the case today for most generations, because boomers aren't retiring because they have to work longer because their portfolios were crushed. Mm-hmm. And Gen X doesn't get promoted because boomers are still around. And so now we have millennials that are saying, I have some great ideas that can solve a lot of these problems if you only would listen to me. And no one's listening. They say, you're too young, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, they might not know what they're talking about. So let's bring in an idea here. Let's bring in an idea called dual mentorship.
Okay.
Now, mentorship tends to go one way. Older teaches the young. How about we have this idea of, like the movie, The Intern, with Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro, where you have a boomer and a millennial come together. Can you imagine bringing all that experience and knowledge with all this creativity and tech, and to bring this together to create something amazing?
Yeah, as long as both of those people are open-minded to learn from each other.
Exactly. And so again, it's just about opening up that conversation to understand the person next to you and to communicate a great opportunity together. But the willingness on both ends has to happen in order for that great achievement to come about. But because of this idea of ego and hierarchy, that's not happening. And so that's a lot of what I do today with the University of Denver, excuse me, is where I've actually partnered up with a boomer. So I'm kind of walking how I'm talking here, and which is what I love doing. I am kind of the intern in a sense. Actually, we're both interns. We have a dual mentorship relationship. His name is Brooke Chestnut. And we both co-speak together about generations in the workplace. Okay. And so we have a boomer and a millennial perspective coming together, and we show how this relationship that we have together is an amazing, impactful powerhouse of productivity. And we show that to companies and how they can have that as well within their own company so that they can thrive in this new world.
Sure. So for generations older than millennials that maybe they have companies and they're employing millennials, or they have a church group or some other things where they're in a leadership role over millennials. How should they work with them? And specifically, what are things that they should be doing or mindsets that they should be having in order to create a successful environment for both of them together?
Well, there's a lot of people that think that working with millennials or leading millennials, that they have to give a lot of praise. And that's not always the case, actually.
Okay.
Praise is good for everybody. But when it comes to the millennial generation, what they desire the most is feedback. Okay. They just want to know, are they doing a good job? And have you acknowledged that? Do you realize that they're doing a good job? Because if they don't realize they're making an impact, they will leave.
Okay.
And so there are some great tools out there that you can do that in various ways. But for example, if you're just walking down the hallway and you see one of your millennial coworkers or employees and you just say, hey, great job yesterday with X, Y, and Z, or just great job yesterday, they're going to feel like they're on cloud nine,
right?
Because you're changing the relationship, and all of a sudden they feel like you acknowledged me, therefore I feel like I'm bringing some value and I'm making an impact.
Okay, but I imagine it has to be very authentic too. I find millennials can kind of see through the BS easily.
3 things that millennials require from a person is to be authentic, be transparent, and hold integrity.
Okay.
And integrity is not, I don't want people to think that integrity is also ethics. Integrity means doing the right thing, not following the rules.
Okay.
And so if you can do those 3 things, millennials will be, I don't want to say in your pocket, but they'll be in your pocket. So
they'll be on your side.
They'll totally be on your team, and they will feel like if you're feeling valued in anything, you're going to want to stick around. You're going to want to communicate more. You're going to want to be more involved and engaged. And so if you can bring more engagement in your millennial workforce to be on your side, to produce what you want, you will be a force to reckon with.
Right.
Force to reckon with.
Okay. Then turning the tables a little bit. For the listeners of people who they're in that age group, they're millennials. What do they need to do to be successful in the workplace as well?
Well, number 1, because we've been told one thing, but the world is now another, you really need to identify what your purpose is. Because again, you're going to kind of go up and down and twists and turns and maybe into mom's basement and out, who knows? So really identify with who you are and what you want in life, because you can't get to the end goal without it. The second thing is to really start communicating more. And I don't mean through text or social media. We are experts at that. Really start to have a communication with your boss. Start to propose things rather than ask for permission. So say things like, would you be willing or would you be open to letting me try this, this, and this? And if the answer is no, just ask, well, what makes you say no? Because I would like to know how you think so I can serve you better. Okay. And start to show more of a leadership role, because that's going to get them engaged with you as well. And so then you can start to build that relationship. So it's not always up to the older generations to help millennials. It's also millennials have to help themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
And so you really need to bring that energy forward. And if they're absolutely not wanting to respond to you, they're kind of that typical silver hair, suited corporate ladder, then maybe it's time to move to a company who really gets where the world is going. And that's okay. But to make sure that when you're in that interview, to ask the hard questions that it's difficult sometimes, where you say, well, what's the purpose of the company? Why is it that purpose? Do the employees know why they're working there? And if they know why they're working there, then you can resonate with that why. And so you'll understand this is the place for me or not. Okay,
cool. So a lot of open communication there is really what it comes down to on both sides of the fence. Being willing to speak and be authentic and accept feedback, and have a lot of conversations with each other, not just through technology, but also sitting face to face and getting to know people and working with them better that way.
Yeah, and millennials, unfortunately, we've been stuck behind the screens because we've been forced behind the screens for a long time.
Yeah.
And so now it's to say, all right, let's learn to put the screens aside and have more of an face-to-face communication, even that's on a video call,
Yeah.
But to have more of a face-to-face communication and build those relationships, especially with older generations, because you both can teach each other something valuable.
Yeah, and I think right there is an important lesson in all this. Both sides can teach each other something. Both sides, meaning the millennial generation, older generations. You can learn from each other, but you also need to be humble and be willing to learn from that. You can't be the old stuffy, person who's been sitting in the office for 25 years and knows everything about the company and think that you know it all, when the 25-year-old kid walks in the door. That person knows a lot. They have experience. Be willing to learn from them. And at the same time, if you're the 25-year-old, you're looking at the old stuffy guy who's been in the office forever. That person knows a lot too. So how can you come together? How can you learn from each other is really one of the most important. And this is what I'm learning from you today.
Absolutely. It's really all about communication with yourself and communication with others. And that's what every successful person in business and culture, family, all experience, is you have to have open and safe communication, and to have an environment where it is safe is very important.
For sure. I come back to this a lot in this, doing these interviews. Often it comes down to, having success in life. You got to have a purpose. You got to know what you're doing. You got to communicate. You got to be willing to work with other people, be humble. It's funny. It's the same principles that always come up regardless of the conversation. Love it.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we're all human. We all are very similar, but very different.
Yeah.
And so those values and those core values are really what we're looking for. But there's so many distractions out there that can get us off track.
Sure.
And so it's time to realign and refocus.
Yeah. Love it. So what's next for you? What are you working on from here? What are we looking to do next?
What am I not working on?
Yeah, you're a busy lady.
I am very busy. But no, actually, I've come on board with my upcoming business partner, the Boomer, Chestnut. He and I are actually going to be keynoting and facilitating the Denver chapter for Two Generations Foundation, which means millennials and boomers will come together into a room to find their business partner for their startup.
Oh, very cool.
So we're walking as we're talking, right? And which is very important for millennials too. And I think everyone can appreciate it.
Yeah.
But it's very important for us to do that. And so, we're really excited about that. It's actually happening in 10 different cities and internationally. And so we're kicking off in Denver here. But if anyone's interested in that, you can definitely go to the website 2gfoundation.com.
Sure.
Or you can go to my website. You'll see a blog post. And so it's really interesting how we're doing that. But I'm also got my book launch, and then I got another seminar, and I got lots of stuff.
Are you sleeping at all?
I try. No, 8 hours is very important to me.
That's good.
Yes, I have to have my sleep. So if that has to sacrifice a phone call even or a meeting, sometimes I have to make that sacrifice because I know how I work best. And so I have to take that sacrifice in order for me to be best. Yes, exactly.
Take care of yourself. It's the best thing. One of the best things you can give the world is taking care of yourself.
Well, I mean, think about it. If you're a doctor and you're not taking care of yourself, do you really want him to work on your leg?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've thought about that often. Doctors often are very tired.
Yes. And so I think that's in all ways. If I'm going to a business meeting, or if you're going to a business meeting, you want to be at your best because you want to be more productive and efficient and to create great relationships. But if you're not, analyze it and perhaps you should reschedule.
Right. For sure. Awesome. So give us your website again.
AnastasiaButton.com.
Cool. And then what are on social media or other ways people can connect with you?
I am the only Anastasia Button thus far, all over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Nice. Aren't you on Snapchat? Aren't millennials supposed to be on Snapchat?
For some reason, Snapchat has not really resonated with me as much. But millennials are actually not as big on Snapchat as the generation after us, which is Gen Z.
That's the kids are still high schoolers now, so.
High school, college, they're in that area. So whatever's hot, they're gonna tap
there
into.
There you go. And plus now with Facebook's changes, you don't need Snapchat anymore. Just do what Facebook's doing. So.
And Instagram as well. I mean, it's the battle of social media.
Yeah. Well, I love all this. Has been so informative to me too. Like on all the things we talked about, having your purpose and understanding how you got to that, but also the millennial side of things. How if you're a millennial, you can be successful. If you're working with millennials, how to be successful. I find these very important conversations that need to be happening in the workplace and not even just in business, in life in general. How can we all work together better? So I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your knowledge and sharing your expertise. And I highly recommend everybody go and get Anastasia's book. Go get the free download of it. Check out her website. Follow her on social media because she does put a lot of valuable information out there as well. And these are things that are going to help you out quite a bit. So thanks so much for coming on today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. Hey, thanks again for checking out today's episode of the podcast. If you'd like to get all the notes of what we talked about, all the downloadable files, social media links, etc., check out multiplyourbusinesspodcast.com. And while you're there, why don't you sign up for a ticket to attend one of our upcoming Publish a Book and Grow Rich boot camps. See you there.